And live stream. So there you go.
Cool. Well, hello everybody. My name is Tyler Mills. I'm a senior tech recruiter here with Divi. I work alongside Chris Ricard, who's absolute monster. He's awesome. Love it. But no, I just wanted to say hello to everybody, introduce myself. This is my first time here. So just saying hello. And if you have any questions about Divi, just let me know. Same with everybody online. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Divi.
All right, Tyler. Yeah. Everybody clap for Divi. Woo. This space is super cool. So really happy to have Divi's sponsoring the space and food. Food's delicious. So if my voice sounds hoarse, it's not. I've been talking all day. So you're fine. I did test. I tested negative, so we're good. So yeah, we're gonna have, excuse me, we're gonna have Morgan speak, and then I've got something to demo, and it's gonna be great. So yeah, why don't you come on up, Morgan? Woo, Morgan! Woo! Yeah.
Try that. All right, do I need to connect to?
Oh yeah,
just...
yeah, you just share your screen. You don't need to connect.
Okay. All right. I'm going to be talking about creating a blog with Remix and GitHub Contents Cache. So there we go. But first, I'm Morgan Karchner. I work as a staff engineer at Nav. I'm an author of the Days library, which are primitives to build, flexible, simple, accessible React date picker components. I actually found out when I was going through this, looking through who's using Days. Pluralsight uses it for some of their stuff, and Netflix uses it for some of theirs. So I thought that's kind of cool. Yeah, you can find me on GitHub and Twitter there. Trying to do a plug for my company. At Nav, we're a fintech company that has a mission to reduce the death rate for small businesses. So we help with things like personal business credit, helping people understand what that means, other education type things, trying to align small businesses with people who want to give out loans and matching their qualifications, making it easier for them to find financing and credit cards, and we're trying to do a bunch more stuff. So if that resonates with you, you can always look at nav.com, go check out the career page, or you can talk to me about it as well, and I can get you set up with some of our HR people. Yeah, so about a month ago, Kent posted this in the Remix Discord, right? Talking about how a lot of people really want to use Remix for their personal blog with MDX. It'd be a great idea to have a starter that has all this stuff already set up. Things that can have, comes complete with content only updates that just take seconds to deploy. And maybe even make a little library for it. So I just gone through and finished the Remix tutorials. I really enjoyed working with it. And one of the goals that I had for myself this year was to write more, to get better at writing. And so this sounded like a great side project to do, and with the side benefit that this could potentially help people in the community. So with this, I wanted to use GitHub as a CMS. This isn't a new idea. I think Kent's doing this on his site. I think Sean Wang with his Svelte stuff, his template that he has, uses GitHub Issues API. But it makes a lot of sense for a developer blog because I was already going to host the code on GitHub, so that's one less username and password that I have to set up with a different CMS. You can get version control just through Git. You can get drafts, create a branch, and then merge it into main to publish it. a lot of stuff that just makes a lot of sense for a developer blog. And so for me, I wanted to keep it pretty simple. The GitHub Issues API can work great, but I just wanted to keep it with the GitHub Contents API, essentially just say, hey, GitHub, I have this file that I want to get the contents from and return it. And it's pretty straightforward. You do a GET request to, repos, whatever owner, whatever repo, contents, whatever the path is, and it can return file contents. So, and this makes a lot of sense too in terms of if you're authenticated. I think it's like 5,000, an API limit of 5,000 requests per hour. So if you have, blog content that's not changing very often, and you're caching it at the server level, which we'll talk about more, 5,000 requests per hour is pretty good. And especially if you're using their conditional requests. No, might not be in here, but especially if you're using conditional requests that says, hey, I have this content, has it changed? And if it hasn't, it doesn't count against your API limit. So yeah, GitHub and CMS, I think makes a lot of sense. So, if we kind of get back to that, if you're somebody who wants to use Remix with GitHub as a CMS, with MDX powered blog that has content only updates deployed in seconds, you're probably going to want to have a caching layer on the server side. Right, and as the saying goes, cache and validation is hard. This has been said many times, many different ways. You've probably come across this before. So I kind of sat down and was like thinking about what would this look like to, the initial logic that I had in my mind, what would this look like? And so this is the diagram that I drew out. Just a kind of shout out to Stately AI. This is in their XState, like the team that's building out XState. This editor that they're building out, I created in that, and it's actually a pretty nice experience. But this is kind of the initial thoughts, right? And if you look through this, there's quite a bit here. And this is only the happy paths. Like this doesn't even account for what happens if there's errors here or not. And this isn't even all the happy paths. So there's definitely lots of stuff to think about when it comes to caching. And so this is kind of where we get back to, let's build a library for this caching logic. So that's kind of what I've done here with this GitHub Contents Cache. This library, I'm still considering an alpha. Some of the API and stuff might change, but generally I think the caching logic is pretty good. Right? If we just look at the API, this is kind of what it looks like. You get your GitHub auth token, which owner, which repo, what path you want the content from. Things like if you want to ignore the cache for this particular request. If you want to set a max age for how long this should be cached before you go check in GitHub again. I added a max 404 because GitHub has 404s count against your API limit. So I think it makes sense just to cache those indefinitely and then go from there. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but yeah, user agent, be a good API citizen, pass the user agent that's useful so that if something happens because caching is hard, GitHub could reach out to you and say, hey, maybe you should check that. Things like serializing. So if you have content that, right, for MDX, maybe you want to serialize it and store it in the cache serialized. So you don't have to do that every time you pull it out of the cache. And then the cache instance here, or the cache object, where this logic doesn't care about where you're caching it. It just is the how. So you could do it in, right, SQLite, Redis, on disk, whatever makes sense. And then it returns like the status of what it is, right? Oh, I found it, I didn't find it, something happened. Hey, you got problems, rate limited, et cetera. So yeah. When I was building this out, I wanted to make it pretty lean in terms of dependencies. Like I've used XState, and I think state machines are really great for complex logic, control flow logic like this. But I actually just built a little async generator function to, as a state machine interpreter to do this. And then the logic for that kind of looks similar to what you'd see in XState, but it's using that state machine interpreter that I built. So I think if you look through the steps, it's fairly straightforward what it's trying to do. I think it makes quite a bit of sense there. But also there's a bunch of tests. I made sure that I wanted to cover this 100% because caching is hard. And it has a bunch of test cases for all the different scenarios that you maybe care about. So you can go through and check those out too. Yeah. So bring this back to the blog, like things that I wanted for the blog was, right, the ability to create drafts. GitHub makes that pretty straightforward, easily edit and preview posts. I wanted to embed third-party media like Twitter, YouTube, code highlighting, ability to add interactive elements, posting images and short videos. And then this last point, right, that was kind of brought up, content-only updates, less friction. So, right, Remix isn't the only framework that you can do an MDX blog with. Next.js, Gatsby, others you could do it in. And those would be good solutions, right? Next.js and Gatsby, would be good solutions. But one of the things that's different there is the way that you build the blog. Mostly the examples are in, static. So there's a build step that's to that. And every time you make an edit, you push it, the build step, publish. I know they have things like incremental static regeneration for Next.js, or can't remember the other one for Gatsby, DSG, deferred static generation. But those are specific APIs to those frameworks. Or you can't pull those out and use them somewhere else. So with Remix, that's one of the big selling points that I think the team has brought up, is that it kind of pushes you towards the MDM docs, learning about HTTP standards and things. And hopefully I'll be able to show that with this too. So yeah, let's get to the blog. I only started writing blog posts this year, obviously. I have these two, but the blog content isn't really the main point of this talk. But yeah, I have it set up here on Fly.io. And Fly is nice in that, right, you can deploy to a bunch of different regions, get it as close to your users as possible. And then with the addition of caching, I have a really nice, fast site for users. So if we jump into like how this is being used in that site with Remix here, we'll just go to the routes. And in the first route, it's just a list of, right, it just grabs the list of blog posts. So, right, this page, it grabs the list of blog posts. And the way that it does that is I've created a cache utility file that uses, right, get contents from GitHub, uses that library, does a request to post item list JSON, and pulls back that data, and then I can use that in the component here. So go back to the next page real quick. Right, in the loader, just make that request, say, hey, I want to get the list of post items. and having GitHub be the source of truth for this, it can find that, right? I can see if it's a cache hit or not, and render the blog articles. So let's see. Yeah. So I set just a couple console logs up to hopefully make this a little bit easier to kind of see what's going on. But if we load the page, we can look at just this initial header. It was the cache hit. And we can go through and see, right? We looked in the cache. We found it in the cache. We looked in GitHub. GitHub said nothing changed.
You'll bump up your font 1 or 2.
Yep. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So GitHub says nothing changed. We can see that our API limit, I'm currently at 4,890 left. And if I were to hit this again, right, we get the same deal. So it's using an E tag that GitHub returns in the content that says, hey, you know, if you're caching this, you can send this E tag in a if not modified header back to us, and we'll tell you if it's different. And if it is, we'll send you back the different content in a 200 request. If it's not, we'll just send you a 304 with an empty body. And you can use the content that you already have. So yeah, so I think that works out pretty well. And then if we go to a blog post, it's basically the same thing. Let's do that again. All right, so we looked in the cache, we found it in the cache. And in this case, for blog posts, we're looking in this content folder. So just to make this clear, in the blog post, I just store the blog post in this content folder, and it does a lookup and say, hey, does this slug match? Great, it does, return it. And we're setting this so that it's max age of 30 seconds. So it won't even check GitHub again until 30 seconds after it's already been cached. But when it does, it'll go and say, hey, I have this cache item, here's the E tag, right? If not modified header, and then it'll return. So yeah. I had to create a way to remove the cache items here. So if we look at what that looks like, if it's not cached, right, it's basically the same thing, but now GitHub just, right, we ask GitHub, hey, where's the content? And we see it wasn't cached, but it was found in GitHub, and we return it and then we cache it. This makes it really fast in terms of for blog content that's not changing a lot. You know, most of the time you're going to have a cache hit in your own local cache. And so if you are deployed in many regions as close to users as possible with your own cache at the server level, it's going to be faster. So the other thing that makes Remix really great with this is the API for prefetch. So if we go look at the link tags, I have prefetch set to intent. So you can see, I'm going to disable, uncheck that real quick too. All right, as I hover over this link, it says, hey, this user is interested in this content, right? And it's going to go and prefetch that data, because Remix knows about your routes and it knows which loaders it cares about, and go prefetch that content. And so you can see here, I've just set these up so that I reuse the E tag from GitHub and send that back in its own request, so that when the browser says, hey, has this changed? E tag is a standard header that browsers know about. So it can then send a if not match header in the request with that E tag, and we can look it up. Let's look at it in here. All right, we can look it up in the loader for the blog post. and say, hey, if this is the same E tag that's in my cache, then I can just send a 304 back with an empty body and just make it even that much quicker. Yeah. So I think maybe some of the last things that I'll just show here real quick is, right, this is great for the blog, but if I wanted to create a new blog post, like what does the edit experience look like? How does that work? And so I've set up some additional routes in Remix here for the edit pages. And instead of going in GitHub, this is actually just going to read from the contents folder directly. So right, and I didn't style this very nice because it's just going to be on development. This is never going to be live. And so I can just see like, oh, here's the one that I'm writing about now. I can see and check it out. So if I wanted to create a new blog post, a new article, I create that here and in the file or in that directory. And then when we come back to this directory, we can see, oh, look, it's in there. I click on it, it's going to be mad at me because there's no actual content in here. And then we can grab some of the front matter from this other one just to kind of show. Right, so as I've been writing this out, when creating it, I want to see what it looks like now. And we can easily see the experience is pretty straightforward, I think. And if we wanted to save this for later, you can create a branch, commit it to that branch, and then just get back to it. Right, and with MDX, you can add interactive content. Right, in the static tweet card example, you see I have a tweet component that I use to bring in a static tweet instead of using Twitter's embed API, which has some problems performance-wise. And a lot of people do this with MDX blogs. So yeah, I think that was some of the main stuff I wanted to touch on. Do we want to do questions? Do people have questions?
Can you show again how is it getting the content that is local that's not actually on GitHub yet?
Yeah, so in the routes, I created these particular routes that right in production. I just say, or if it's not in production, it'll work, but if it is, redirect. And then this get post list items just goes and looks up the content, does a redir for the edit page and shows here's the items in that directory. And then for the actual blog post, it's the same deal, but with the get post item edit. So
like development time only routes.
yep.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and so I can go and load that file, take the serialized MDX function that I have right in the cache server that I use when I cache it. I can just see the exact same thing locally. Yeah, so yeah, and then I guess maybe the last thing is, right, deploying this to fly.io, it's pretty straightforward. You can follow the document, but if you have right content only updates, I just want to be able to commit this and have it be live. And so let's do that. Let's just take this file here All right, we'll commit this one. And you can see here we have 2 files that changed, and that's because how I set this up for the initial post list is in this post item list JSON. I have a Git hook that on commit, it'll run this pre-commit step and it'll create that post item list. So that's the source of truth for, which posts that I have. And I don't need to do anything special in terms of like manually doing that myself. If there's changes in those files in the front matter, whatever it is, that can get picked up in this particular script on commit. And then when it's deployed, that file will change. And when there's a request to GitHub, it says, yeah, that file's different. Here's the list of the new posts. So
Those, should know this, do those commit hooks run if you edit the thing on GitHub?
I don't know. No, they probably don't.
Those jerks.
So for me, I know that I'm probably mostly just going to edit it this way.
Yeah.
I think for Kent's blog, right, you have it set up in a way that when changes happen, you have a GitHub action that'll.
You could do the same thing with this approach too.
Yeah. It could be similar in terms of, right, the ignore cache. You can have a route that specifically says, yeah, ignore cache for these paths. I didn't want to get that complex right now. I don't have people that are, committing updates to my blog posts. I barely have a blog post as it is. So just keeping it simple. But yeah, if you were to do that, you maybe would want to think about how to keep that this particular file up to date, and maybe that would be a way to do it in a GitHub action as well. But let's see. So, right, we just pushed that. Well, all I did was git commit, git push. Now we can see that it is live here on the site, and I didn't have to do anything like, I didn't have to wait for builds. I didn't have to set up the ISR, DSG, those types of APIs, which again work great. But I think this is a pretty nice setup. So yeah. Anything else?
All right, thanks.
Cool.
That's great. Okay, sorry, 1 second. Where did Zoom go? There it is. Okay, so let's see here. Oh, that's not gonna work that way. Here we go. Something that is totally not pointing the right direction. Whatever. Okay, hopefully that works for folks online because I'm no longer there to monitor to make sure that it is. So I just wanted to shout out really quick for anybody online. We do have other meetups in the world. People are making more now. And so if you're interested in the grueling task of organizing a meetup every month, then let me know and I will help you get onto this map. It's awesome. And I wanted to mention that we do have another meetup next month scheduled. We're just regular every month, first Tuesday of the month. They do tend to sneak up on you. So keep an eye out for that. If you do want to speak, we have this handy dandy form that you can fill out to write down what you'd like to talk about. It's awesome. It's like a web form. You can totally fill it out, put in your information, and now, boom, you're speaking. So please do speak. Because
If you fill that out, you will speak.
yeah, it's not like some
A call for papers or anything.
yeah, it's like please. I remember the first meetup I ever went to was Utah.js, And I'd never been to a meetup before, and I looked on the meetup page and it said that they were looking for speakers. I'm like, no way. Oh my gosh. And so I submitted a talk, and I didn't realize like how meetups are always looking for speakers, unless you're in like the Bay Area or something, I guess. But anyway, yes, love to have you speak. Okay, so what I am going to talk about today is my website. So kenseedots.com. I have a blog and a bunch of other stuff on here. Lots of this stuff is coming from all over the place. So this is all coming from GitHub. I could probably switch to use Morgan's awesome GitHub cache thing. And then on top of that, we have courses and, well, that's mostly static, honestly, but the workshops is not. So this stuff is coming from Tito API. Call Kent podcast, this is coming from the Transistor API. This one is coming from the Simplecast API. So yes, I do have 2 different podcast hosts, and I had to integrate with each of their APIs. Transistor is way better. So if you want to, if you want to use one of them. So my point is, I'm interacting with a lot of different APIs on my site. And one of the things that is really important to me is I want to be able to turn off my network and still be able to get work done. From like the very beginning of all development that I've ever done, I don't know why, but that was just really important to me. I wanted to be able to have your end-to-end tests run completely offline. And so that is the situation I have here. Unfortunately, I can't simulate that without stopping the stream. So you're just gonna have to trust me. This does all work offline. The one thing that doesn't is images. So those will not work offline. You'll just get like a little box. And I figured that's an acceptable trade-off. So I don't have to have these images on my machine. So those are coming from, well, this one's actually coming from Simplecast. My blog posts, these are all coming from Cloudinary. So anyway, I want to show you how I got that set up because I think it's pretty cool. So let me just look at my my notes here. So first of all, I do have a Postgres and Redis database for my blog. Redis is responsible for caching all of the blog post content and everything. Postgres is responsible for your user authentication stuff, as well as you like scroll down here, and if you're on the page for long enough, it will say you read this blog post. And so now I won't recommend that blog post to you again. And also it will count towards your team. And so then you can get your team up and make the whole blog post themed after your team. So all of that is talking to Postgres. Some of that is actually cached in an LRU cache, and some is cached in Redis. So that's something for me to actually be able to use the site at all. I need to be able to connect to a Postgres database. And so I'm just using Docker Compose for that. And when I started building Remix, my Remix site, by the way, I was 100% front-end developer. I did do back-end stuff at Node. I barely, or at PayPal. I barely understood what I was doing. You would not want me doing any DevOps stuff. And so here all of a sudden I'm doing Docker, which seems like above my pay grade. Is how I feel about it. But I was able to figure it out, and it's actually pretty cool. So I have 2 services, Redis and database. I still have no idea what, maybe this should have been Postgres, but Docker is responsible for loading up these individual images and getting it up and running. And then I am using the Docker app on my machine, which sometimes takes a really long time to pull up. It's coming, it's coming. It's coming, but that way I can manage my Docker images and everything without having to run any Docker scripts, which is really nice. So if you, like me, are freaked out about Docker, then the desktop app is actually, I mean, it's not the amazing, but like I've got Redis and a Postgres database running right now. That's cool. And then you just expose different ports and stuff and make it all work. It's cool. So I have a way to connect to my database locally. I'm using Prisma for connecting to, oh, shoot. I'm just looking to see if you can see the whole password of my database. Yeah, there's my Discord client secret, Transistor API secret. I meant to open this one.
Should have cut the network before you started.
Yeah, I should have. All right, YouTube, don't you dare. Just give me a second.
No, I think you need to change
Luckily,
it
yeah,
right
the
now.
database, those secrets were not fully revealed. Yeah, don't touch my transistor API. Dang it. So what I wanted to show was my database URL for local. So that's just pointing to my local host. Redis URL is the same. And yeah, so anyway, that's the data portion of all of this. Docker Compose is pretty cool. Okay, so there are a lot of third-party APIs that I'm using as well that I'm not going to load up like a transistor in a Docker container. That would be kind of ridiculous. So I'm using mock service worker to intercept all API requests. So let's look at an example. So if I go to, there we go. So this is my file that's responsible for communicating with the transistor API. A bunch of stuff going on in here. In fact, I even talked to the AWS API right here. The upload URL is actually an AWS S3 bucket that I upload to. So talking to a bunch of APIs using fetch and passing on my secrets and all that stuff, hitting their APIs. So I can go to mock's transistor and I have this mock episode function that I can use to generate a bunch of fake data for what a fake episode would look like. And so actually I can show you what it is locally because this is all cache. So even though I'm not actually offline, it's still using my local cache stuff because maybe I'm working with a new API or I'm doing something special locally. So everything is works locally just as well. So if I go to the Call Kent podcast, then down here, you're going to see all of these with like random stuff generated for each one of these. Look at that, transitions on route, like animated route transitions. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so anyway, all that stuff is in there. And hi, Taylor. I'm not sure why I picked that one as my default embed, but that's what it is. Yeah, so the way that this works is we can make all of these episodes, but we have to intercept the network request that's made when I'm trying to fetch those episodes. And so with MSW, I can create a bunch of these handlers. You can kind of think of it a little bit as their own take on express routes, sort of. Kind of would love for them to build like make it more standards based, but so this request and response is like their own special kind of object. We'd love to see an adapter to turn that into a regular request response. But yeah, so I can actually, this is for me posting a new episode, so creating a new episode. I can actually create an episode in my app. I can go to record your call, make a new recording, and I can record stuff. I guess it's using the wrong mic or something. Yeah, accept that. And then I can record. So basically the Call Kent podcast is people record in their browser some question, and then I record in my browser a response to their question, and then my server will stick those together with FFmpeg and then upload that to Transistor. So that's what this is handling, is when I'm posting a new episode. Let's find rest.get. Yeah, so when I want to get a new a listing of my episodes, then I'm hitting this API. MSW makes sure that when I hit that endpoint, instead of actually calling the Transistor API, it calls this function, and I can return my own JSON, which is those fake episodes. So the way that this works, though, is really cool. It's totally transparent, it's totally transparent to my app. My app has no idea that these requests are being intercepted, and it only happens during development. So if I go to the way I set up my server to run with PM2, when I start my server, I'm using the Express adapter for Remix. And so I start my server with node index, and I require the mocks directory as part of that. So before it actually runs index, it actually requires .env config, which will read my .env file that we all just saw. And it'll also require the mocks directory. And so if we go to mocks index, it requires this file, which sets up ES build, so register, so I can actually write everything in TypeScript. And that's when it comes in here, it grabs all of these different handlers like the ones that we saw. Here's the transition ones, and sends that off to the setup server function from MSW, and MSW is configured to listen. And so anytime there's a request that I've set up a request handler for, it'll call my function instead. And I think that's super cool. So if I want to see, okay, what does everything look like with real data, even in development, I literally just comment that out, and now all of a sudden everything's real data. In fact, maybe this is a bad idea, but maybe not. Let's just try that now. And actually, we'll see what that looks like from here. Because I have caching set up, this is all fake data. And so I have this special query param I can put on any route. Because I'm logged in as the admin, I can add fresh to any of my URLs, and it will skip the cache and update the cache. So this is all the live data now. So yeah, it's really transparent. I think that it's awesome. That I like, that's how easy it is. MSW makes this sort of thing just sick. It's so cool. Okay, I think that, oh yeah, let me show you another cool thing. So the way that my authentication works is I use, actually here, I need to start this over because I don't want to use the live APIs for this. So start that over. I use magic links for authentication. So you just give me your email address, and I will, I don't know why that is empty, and I will send you a link. But locally, I don't want to have to, talk to an email server and everything like that. That takes more time if I am offline. I actually, I will hop on my one wheel with this backpack on my back, and I'll ride up as far as I can into the woods of Provo Canyon, where there's no cell service at all, and I'll work there. That's one of my favorite places to work. And so I can't like tether to my phone or anything. And so being able to be completely offline matters a lot to me. So anyway, the way that I make this work is I say email a login link. That magic link has been sent, but MSW intercepted the API call to Mailgun. And what it did instead was it logged out the contents of the email. So now I can just option click this, and boom, I'm logged in. So like any email that's sent is gonna do that. Same thing if I record a new call. This actually, when I submit this, blah, 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 this will ping me on Discord when somebody records a new call, so that I'm notified that that happened. And locally, it just logs that out, so I can see, oh yeah, it would have sent to Discord had I not been intercepted. Yeah, so that's also another really cool thing about being able to just make it all work offline. MSW is a huge part of all of this. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is I talked about how I want my my end-to-end tests, or all my tests, to run completely offline. And I use Cypress for my end-to-end tests. And I was going to show you more of this stuff with Cypress, but I discovered a bug in Cypress, I believe, while I was building this or working on this. And so I cannot show you because it's not working, but I will show you how it works. So with Cypress, or with end-to-end testing in general, you want to only have one test that goes to your login screen and goes through that login flow. Really common practice is just to have them all do that so that you can get in a logged in state, and now I can continue with my test. It's not, that adds like 5 seconds to every single test that you write for end-to-end tests. So not awesome. It's much better to just have one that tests that, and then you would hit an endpoint directly or do something fancy to get an authenticated state, and then you can proceed as an authenticated user. And that can take like half a second. So the way that it works in Cypress, because I'm using magic links for my authentication, I probably could make like some special endpoint that just gives me a cookie. And I do that in other apps. But what I did in this one, I think is actually kind of interesting. So I have this special command in Cypress where I can say sci.login, and that will give me a new user that I can do whatever I want to with, like record a call, as one of my tests does that. So what login does is it accepts a couple of options, has a bunch of defaults if you don't care, and then it makes a post request to this _test login. So this is a test route that is only active if you have built the app with a special environment variable set. And the way that works is actually pretty cool. So it's in my Remix config. I have this routes config where you get defined routes. So this is how you can define, what's the word I'm looking for? Dynamic routes. So if, yeah, there are various use cases for this. This is one of them. And so I have a bunch of protection around here because I do not want to build my test routes in production, because that would allow anybody to log in as anybody else, which would not be good. And I have additional protections to make sure that it didn't accidentally happen anyway. But here I say, I'm going to create a route. It's test login, and here's where it is. I actually discovered recently I could put this inside of my Cypress directory. So it's not in my app directory. You just have a dir name thing or whatever, the full path, and it'll work, which is probably what I should do. But if I go into that test routes directory, then I can get that JSON, pull off all those things, and I can either create a user or update a user if their name changed, or I just get that user. And then I redirect to the magic link URL. And so if you post to this, you're going to get a redirect over to the magic link URL, which is going to give you a cookie, and then you can proceed as an authenticated user. So yeah, anyway, that's the way that works. It's pretty cool. I wish I could show you, but Cypress is busted. So, or at least I think it is. I did file an issue, so maybe we'll see who's the last one standing. Just kidding. And so then with that command, now my test can be like on the contact, where I can say, oh, actually, bad example, our calls. And say, hey, I want to log in, and then go to the calls, and then I want to click on record and create a new recording. And this is me interacting with the recorder, which is written with egg state. So 2 shout outs for egg state. It's awesome. And then I actually switch and I log in as the admin and I record my response. The test is super cool, and I wish that Cypress wasn't broken right now. But anyway, it works out really awesome. So being able to do everything offline is really, really cool. And MSW is a really key piece of that. Docker too, as scary as Docker is to me, still, it actually is pretty nice to be able to build like what is a pretty legit app, totally offline. So I can go up into the woods and work on it and still, yeah, enjoy nature and stuff. So that is what I wanted to show you today. Any questions about what I'm doing? We ready to be done? We do have some Chick-fil-A left over, so feel free to grab that. I did bring stickers, so if you haven't gotten your Remix sticker yet, or any of the other stickers that I've got back there, go ahead and grab them. Again, we will have another meetup in a month, so hope to see you there. Please do talk to me if you are interested in speaking. Yeah, question?
I was going to ask if you could show the link to where to submit forms for talks.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to remix.as/meetup, that will take you to our meetups page. And if you go, yeah, just click on Utah. And actually, what I will do is we've got a Utah thread inside of the meetups channel in Discord. And actually, I just posted it there. So yeah, you can get it there. That's probably the easiest way for me to get it to you. The short URL is remix.as/speak-Utah. Is that zoomed in?
Remix. Is that a public server?
The Discord server, yeah. Yep. So the easiest way to get to that is rmx.as/discord. Or you can go to remix.run, scroll all the way down, and there's a Discord link there too. And the Discord server is awesome. So if you're not there, join, because those folks are the nicest people. I'm not just talking about the like Remix people, like I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about like the members of our community are awesome. So cool. Any other questions or comments or yeah?
Do you call your website your blog?
I call it my site. Yeah.
You should correct everybody who ever calls it your blog.
Yeah, right. This is not a blog. Yeah. A lot of people refer to these kinds of sites as develop folios. So it's like a portfolio for developer. Yeah, mine is totally not that. Also, mine is way more complicated than most people need for their personal sites. Like I've got podcasts and workshops and a bunch of other stuff. And also when I was building it, my intent was I wanted to be able to teach people how to build really awesome web applications. And so I was like, I've got to over-engineer this thing so I know how to do that. So I know how to teach people how to do that. And so I actually go into pretty deep.
I don't think you over-engineered it. I think you over-scoped it.
I over-scoped it, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
well said. It's not over-engineered at all. It is engineered perfectly for what
A
it
developer blog needs someone to record a question and post it.
Yeah.
And then you record it on the same website, and then the same website stitches it together and publishes it.
Yeah, it's actually
Crazy.
It's pretty legit, man. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I actually had that piece working on Cloudflare Workers with FFmpeg WASM. That was actually really cool, but I decided to just go with Fly. But yeah, I do go into pretty big detail on how I built it. So if anybody wants to go through this, it takes you through. It's 26,000 lines of code. If I hadn't been using Remix, it'd probably be 50. So Remix helps a lot. But like it's so cool. And oh, even check this out. These little graphs that charts that I put in here. Watch this. I'm gonna go up, change to light mode, and now look. The charts are white. Oh snap! Those are images. I just switch it off. It's so cool though. Yeah, they're just images. But anyway, yeah, like this is for real. Oh, you don't see me zoom it in, do you? Let me bump this up a bit. So this is my deployment pipeline, and I actually really like what Morgan does because his when he publishes something new, it's like boom, instant. Mine takes about 10 seconds. Because the way, 10 whole seconds. Because the way that mine works is I have a GitHub action that runs, determines if there were any content changes in the last commit, and we'll go tell the server, hey, there were content changes, you need to go refresh these bits of content. But like, sure beats my Gatsby blog that took 15 minutes to deploy anytime I made even a typo change. So yeah. But like I'm deploying to 6 regions all over the world. I've got Postgres read replicas and like a silly amount of stuff. It's nuts. But my goodness, is it awesome. So feel free to take a look at that. This is what convinced me to jump on board with Remix. I was like gainfully unemployed or self-employed and having an awesome time as a full-time educator. I was planning on teaching everybody React and testing and Remix and TypeScript. And then I rebuilt my site. Well, actually, I wasn't planning on Remix until I built my site, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do any of that stuff anymore. I just want to teach people Remix now. And so that's why I joined. So like this site is the reason that I am working for Remix now. So, sorry. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I'm so much happier now. This is way better than what that future could have been.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I was just curious, when someone records that, are you doing any streaming there in that API, or is that,
No.
or do you record that locally and then just ship off the
Yeah,
file?
so I'm actually, I am a little bit, embarrassed is probably the right word, of how I did this, because like, this is super not my thing. But what I do is I record this into a stream, well, it's like an audio, I can't even remember, it's like an audio media recorder thing. I turn that into base 64. And then I post it. At the time, Remix didn't have some of the features it does now. I may have done some of this differently now. Yeah, so I base 64 encode it. I post that to the server. The server saves that in the database. It's base 64. I tried binary and it was bigger. So it's like, all right, base 64, sure. MP3 file as base 64. And yeah, so there's no streaming. The object of the podcast though is if you go on for too long on this, it will, this will turn yellow and then red, be like, stop talking. It's like, I can't answer that many questions in one podcast. So it's supposed to be like a 2-minute thing. And then my response is typically like 10 minutes and that all works fine. So, yeah, eventually streaming would be cool. And I probably could make that work. Remix doesn't have, Remix doesn't have like official APIs for streaming like that, I think. Right.
The request response API is a little limited there.
Yeah.
And the platforms you deploy to, they all just do base 64 anyway too.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
But you could totally implement it yourself. If I were doing it I'm just using Express, so I do whatever you do with Express.
What is the limitation for streaming with Remix? Is it on the front end or is it on the server side that, I mean, because the server side, it seems like you could just open up a stream and throw.
Yeah, so
It seems like it, but then you deploy to Cloudflare workers and you can't.
yeah,
So the problem is that we deploy to a bunch of places, right? Remix is an actual server. There's an adapter that adapts the web fetch request and response API to the real server. Might be Express, might be Cloudflare, might be Dino. We've got on Dino now. Fastly has their own V8 isolates. So we're kind of, it's hard to decide, do we do the common denominator of all of them?
Right. I see.
Or do we do specific things for each one? So
yeah,
we're kind
there's
of,
nothing stopping a Remix app from doing this. It's
you
just,
can send your node request response objects into the Remix app and use those instead.
Yeah,
Or something like
that's
that.
actually what I'm doing in here. Let's see, server TS. Yeah, it's in server index. There it is. So I'm using Express, and this create request handler is from Remix. Yeah, so I actually do have a handful of one-off. Yeah, where is it? Yeah, my redirects middleware. I've got a couple of one-off middlewares that I've got. And so that's how I do it, is if I wanted to stream, I would do whatever you do for Express. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure there's a solution for that. So it's nothing stopping a Remix app from doing it. Remix just doesn't currently support a way to do it out of the box. Cool. Other questions? Okay, thanks everybody for coming, and have a nice night. And thank you, live stream. Bye.